Welcome to the Medovia Menopause Podcast, your trusted source for evidence-based, science-backed information related to menopause. Medovia is dedicated to changing the narrative about menopause by educating, raising awareness, and supporting women in this stage of life, both at home and in the workplace. Visit medovia.com to learn more. I'm one of your hosts, April Haberman, and I'm joined by Kim Hart. We're co-founders of Medovia, certified health coaches, registered yoga teachers, and midlife mamas specializing in menopause. You're listening to another episode of our podcast, where we offer expert guidance for the most transformative stage of life, bringing you real conversations, education, and resources to help you overcome challenges and reach your full potential through midlife. Join us and our special guests each episode as we bring vibrant, fun, and truthful conversation, and let us help you have a deeper understanding of menopause. Hi, everyone. Today on the show, we have Jenn Nelson. Jenn is the founder and CEO of We Belong Everywhere, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering women in sports leadership. As a contributor to Fords.com and Sports Money, she provides insightful analysis on the latest trends in the sports industry. Jenn is also the author of Women's Sports Update newsletter, where she highlights key developments in women's sports, advocating for greater visibility and equity. We love that. In this episode, we explored an important and yet overlooked topic in both the workplace and sports. We've talked about this before, the impact of menstruation and menopause, but in this episode, on women in sports. Jenn shared her inspiration for starting We Belong Everywhere and how the organization is breaking down barriers that women face in reaching leadership roles within the sports industry. This is such an interesting episode. Let's dive in. Hi, Jenn. Welcome to the show.
Hi, April. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you today. This is a topic that we have not talked about on the show before, and it's a really important topic. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk about women's sports. Just before we came on to record, we were just saying what an important time in women's sports. And we're going to unpack what you do and why you do it. And that might actually be a great place to start, is to dive right in and have you tell us why you started We Belong Everywhere. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I appreciate you asking. And it's kind of a loaded question for me. It's very personal. I can share a bit about my background in sports. So I've coached youth sports at the club soccer level for a cumulative about 10 years. And I grew up, as an athlete in various sports, soccer, track, softball, basketball. So sports has always been an integral part of my life as far as, just developing a lot of the tools and the different aspects of my life that have helped me really push forward, and gain success and traction in a whole bunch of different areas from personal to professional. But the founding of We Belong Everywhere really, I think, originates with the title of what it is. We belong in this space. We belong everywhere. In my opinion, I think it's important that women are a part of the decision-making process, a part of an active representative group of sports. It's important that we push and advocate for women in leadership roles to be the decision makers, to be a part of that group of people that are fundamentally shaping sports, not just in women's sports, but in sports in general. Going back to my coaching side of things, I've seen firsthand just the impact that having women in roles that are, fundamental for young kids and for youth, as far as their development and their understanding of what leadership is, and being in head coaching roles. It was a tremendous privilege to be able to, to speak to that and to be an example of what it means to be a leader to young girls and young boys. And I think it fundamentally makes a difference in their lives to have that representation and to be able to see that, they can be in those places as far as girls in sports and girls growing up to understand what leadership is and how they can be a part of that. And on the same end, with boys, I'm a mom of 3 boys. And it's important to me that they understand and see that, that who I am as a woman, makes no difference between if, their dad or me, in a leadership role, that we both have an impact and a say, and we're a part of the decision process. So transferring that into sports, that fundamental, point of, we belong in these spaces just as much as anyone else. I think that's really the kickstart, the kick for why I started We Belong Everywhere.
It's so good. And we've had conversations prior to this podcast, you and I, Jenn, just about the fact that younger girls may not think about women in leadership roles in sports. It might not be top of mind. And so having those role models is really important. Can you share with our audience, just kind of a side note, how many women are in leadership roles in your industry? What does that percentage look like now? And what's your desire? Where would you like to see it?
That's a really great question. Diving into the research, it's really not that different from what you would see in the corporate world or broader society. Women in leadership roles in sports, they face some of the similar barriers, such as unconscious bias, a shortage of mentorship and sponsorships. Women are steered into very specific roles. And what we see as far as the numbers is, that data actually is something that does need to be expanded upon. But what I have seen, when you look at the women in college coaching report card from the NCAA, institution, the Tucker Center for Research of Girls and Women in Sport, they do amazing work as far as report cards on, women in leadership within the women's sports side of NCAA D1. And what we see there, as far as just head coaching positions, we see about 47.4% of head coaching positions in the women's side of NCAA. I mean, that's about the number. It's still less than half, even on the women's side for just head coaching roles. It's even worse for women of color in those particular positions, where only 7% of women of color lead NCAA women's teams. And you don't even want to talk about the men's side of things, where only 1% as a whole you'll see women in head coaching roles, and that's across all NCAA divisions 1, 2, and 3. So just looking at that sector alone, you can see that there's a ton of work that needs to be done as far as empowering and bringing women up into these leadership roles. And obviously that stems from a lot of different points, from recruitment to hiring practices to, really looking at the gender and biases and stereotypes that women deal with in leadership. But believe it or not, there's a ton of work that needs to be done as far as gathering more data and research on women in sports across pro sports, across the university level, and especially in youth. It's difficult to find the numbers on youth sports in general on where women stand as far as leadership goes. But yeah, so there's definitely a lot of work to do there.
Yeah. And so why don't you share with our audience what specifically what We Belong Everywhere does to help address some of those barriers? What's your organization's sort of goals and objectives to help change the landscape?
Yeah, so we really want to focus on three specific programs. So we have a program that's directed towards our youth, called a Youth Discovery Program. We have a career path and leadership program that provides women with access to networking events, leadership workshops, internships, study abroad programs, any opportunities that can give them a leg up in that pipeline towards leadership. And then there's a third program that I'm actually super excited about, which we'll be launching. We'll be launching all three of these programs within Q1 of next year. But a data and research program. So we really plan to collect data from sports organizations to identify challenges in recruiting and career progression and professional development for women in coaching, management, executive roles, even board roles. So we really want to have a data-driven approach towards our advocacy and program development. And that's something that we're really excited about, because obviously data doesn't lie. Gathering that data and being able to say, hey, across these particular organizations, this is what we see. How can we help you improve, or how can we help women improve is going to be fundamental to what we're doing. But expanding a bit more on the other programs that we have, Youth Discovery Program really focuses on empowering, young girls in particular through tailored mentorship events, collaborations with local sports clubs and schools. So the whole purpose of engaging with our youth is really to hit on those societal issues of stereotypes and biases. If we're going to empower and essentially change those biases and stereotypes, well, we have to talk to our youth, and we have to engage with them and show them through example and share leadership with them, so that they can see that those pathways are available to them. They are very much empowered to be in those particular areas. So that's very important to us. And then, we've got engaging with women who are currently looking for expansion into sports leadership. So we want to really connect with them and create a community among them to help them on their career path towards leadership.
Yeah. Well, I love your work with the youth. Kim and I both have kids. They're young adults now, but I know Kim and I both were involved in some way or the other in their sports careers, I guess you could call it, Kim.
Yeah, careers.
Before college. Yeah. But it's super important, and we all have a passion for youth. Obviously, Kim and I are in the menopause space, and we work with midlife women, really mostly with women that are 30 plus years old. And you just mentioned that your third program that you have in place. And I'm wondering, as we're talking about barriers to entry, right? And barriers to those leadership roles, do you see, or do we know, coming back to this lack of data piece, whether or not menopause and menstruation is one of those barriers?
Yeah, I would. I mean, like you said, the data we need to improve on data, but there's a massive discrepancy in health related research on women in sports. And that is, that includes athletes, and that also includes, your leadership or your administration, people working within the sports industry. If you're a woman, you're gonna have, we're all working through our reproductive cycle from, day one. So there's definitely discrepancies there with research. And it's been shown through history, we've a lot of what we've seen as, men's health data, health and wellness data being transferred over to women, and it just not matching up. And that's something that really needs to be dealt with. There's definite consequences in the way that data is being analyzed. And there are specific challenges that athletes are dealing with. There's specific challenges that, women later on in life are dealing with. And I do think that, all of that needs to be, it needs to be discussed and it needs to be worked through. If we, on the athlete side of things, if we want to see better performance, then we need to talk about menstruation. We need to talk about the physical discomfort that women deal with, irregular cycles, increased risk of injury through hormonal fluctuations, which even non-athletes deal with, and it's difficult. Right. And then, going into menopause, the hormonal changes and the mental health issues that come with it. And we're looking at women in leadership and how are we supporting them and what are we doing to make sure that they understand these things. I think there's a ton of way that sports organizations can really support that. Obviously through what Medovia is doing with education and resources, injury prevention programs for athletes. There's some really interesting research that recently came out as far as women's hormonal balances, I believe, with the menstrual cycle. So there was a study done. It's called the Menstrual Cycle in Sports Injuries, a Systemic Review. And it actually talked about how the presence of female athletes, the hormonal changes and cycles within female athletes, how there's injury risks at certain points of the cycle. And, when you're talking about athletes and athletic performance and supporting women athletes, that's we got to take a look at that and really help them and support them through education and resources. And what about the transition forward into menopause, and how are we educating our athletes into that phase? How are we educating our leadership into that? So yeah, it's a very interesting subject, and it's something that I find very fascinating, particularly in sports.
Yeah.
And how do you influence those organizations and educate those women in the sports space? Because I know there's been a lot of, and I appreciate you bringing in, real data, because, sometimes you can talk about those things, but without having to back it up with some real statistics. But there's a lot of information coming out on what you should eat during various phases of your cycle. And of course, we talk about what you should eat during menopause. So I'm sure when you talk about the cycles that you're referring to for women, and when they're more prone to injury and when they're not, how do we get this information out there? How do we get sports organizations to invest in women's health and educating the women so that they can do their best performance? Because that's what everyone wants in that case, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what comes to mind for me is, with any corporation, whether it's a sports organization or for-profit, nonprofit, what's going to drive momentum forward is performance. And you want to look at how your leaders are performing, how your athletes are performing. And so I think there's obviously a direct correlation between looking at that data and making sure that we're doing everything we can to help women perform and help women, do what they need to do at their highest possible levels. So I think taking that data on health and wellness, especially within our reproductive cycle, and understanding how it relates to women and their performance, I think that's important. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's something that'll help all of us push to our peak and push forward and cross those boundaries that maybe we haven't been able to cross, because something as simple, like you said, as nutrition can make such a big difference on cognitive function, on how you're feeling that day. And we can't just run away from those things and say, oh, we're the same as men, we can just walk through things. I mean, we have been doing that. That's what we've done forever. We're still doing it. But if we can improve and we can help, women in leadership, we can help athletes, we can help women within any organization improve how they're feeling and how they're performing, that's not a bad thing at all. And I think that that's important to address.
Yeah.
And we are different than men, by the way.
Yeah.
We're not the same. And, you've heard it said time and time again that we're not just smaller men.
Right.
Entire makeup is different. So it is important to talk about. As we're thinking about advocacy and, what can we do to move the needle forward, something that it just came to mind was advocacy for our audience or from our audience and action steps that they might be able to
Mm.
take to help move the needle, push that needle forward as well. And, for the life of me, I can't remember where it was, but I saw an article. There was a woman that owned a sports team, I believe, or maybe she was building an arena. Do you know what I'm talking about, Jen?
Yeah. Hmm.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Because she is doing some amazing things with that project. And I think, I remember hearing one of the Seattle Storm co-founders recently. She said, someone asked, well, how can we how can we really move that needle forward and ensure that women's sports is supported? And she just said, come
Go to
watch
the
the
games.
games. Exactly. And I think what this person's doing enables women to do that when they're menstruating, for example, if there's tampons and pads in the bathrooms. So can you speak to that a little bit? I'm so glad that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's awesome that you brought that up. So Michelle Kang, she's actually the owner of the Washington Spirit. She actually has a stake in a couple of European women's soccer teams as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Lyon is one. But she's actually invested recently. I think it was early August. It came out that she invested 50 million in a global initiative aimed specifically at enhancing health and performance of elite female athletes. And that in particular really excited me because we're not just talking about what can we eat better or how can we weight train better. We're talking about how our body works and how we can get the most out of our body and how do we prepare for what our body is going through. So I'm really excited for that program. And I think that she has, you talk about leaders. Michelle Kang, she's definitely one that's leading the charge. I don't know if you heard, but she just got Michael Johnson into Magic Johnson. Yeah, Magic Johnson. She was. I know she was just pulling her charm and getting him into the Washington Spirit Club, which is awesome, and I'm really excited for that. But yeah, more of that, more women in, leaders pushing forward on, how can we really look at what women's bodies are going through and how can we get the best out of our performance, out of our bodies, out of our life. And I think it's important that we continue those types of initiatives. And I'm so excited to see what comes of that program in particular.
Yeah. Me too.
So looking ahead at next steps for you and We Belong Everywhere, what's in the plan and what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean the whole goal for us is we aim to level the playing board. We want to see equal opportunity and representation in sports leadership. So for us, that's going to be working through our advocacy programs, our youth program, our professional development program, and very much our data program, which I can't express enough. I'm so excited for. We want to see women continue to rise. We want to be able to show through data that we've helped women push forward through our programs and into sports leadership. Essentially, I would love to build a pipeline. I would love to see, ideally, I would love to see the women we work with, the community we create, moving directly into these particular roles or creating their own roles, really. So that's really what's next for us. We're in a phase right now of really developing our programs and solidifying everything we need to launch. We will launch beginning of 2025 as far as activating our programs. But so excited for this next year and the networking that we'll do and the partnerships that we'll gain and ultimately just pushing that needle forward for women in sports leadership.
Love it.
I have to ask because I'm just thinking about my daughter when she was younger. I'm picturing her with her little pigtails and curls. If she were sitting in front of you, what would you say to her? What advice would you give her as an aspiring little girl or young woman looking at leadership role in sports? What would you say to her?
That is a great question. So don't be afraid to take space. Don't be afraid to move into the space that you feel passionate about and take the risks. It's important that I think a lot, it's even stereotypical as women that we take less risks than men, which is probably good most of the time. But I think in this context, moving into leadership, you've got to take some risks. You've got to push your own needle forward, and you have to be okay with failing. You have to be okay with the steps and all that comes with getting to that point that you consider success. And that for me comes a lot with a growth mindset, understanding that I don't know everything, and I can learn, and I can move forward, and I can grow as I continue in leadership. And I hope that all girls, all women, all boys, everyone really understands that you don't have to have it all at once, all the answers, all the keys. Take that action forward, take your space, take your risks, and just have that growth mindset.
I love take your space. Women don't always tend to do that. And I always have to remember that there's space to take up, and it's okay. And you have permission to do that. That's so great. How can our listeners support and get involved with We Belong Everywhere?
Great question. So for now, really, spreading the word is important. Just having, just sharing what we're doing, what we stand for. And, we're at a point where we're just making those partnerships, and we're aligning with other companies, other organizations that really understand how necessary it is to have, representation of women in leadership. So sharing the word, and then also, we have a website up that anyone can go to, webelongeverywhere.org, that shares a lot about our programs and what we're doing. And you can definitely contact us through there if you have any questions or if you're interested in getting involved. But as we move towards launching this next year, just keep us in mind, and we hope to engage our community and continue to grow.
So webelongeverywhere.org. That's great. That's a great place to find you.
Yeah,
and Jenn, you're a nonprofit organization. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I was in development for years and years and years. So I'll just say it. It's okay to say it on the podcast. I'm assuming that you'll take donations as well and financial support if they need it. So anyone that wants to support them financially, you can find them on the website. Because I'm sure that that's an important piece of keeping your organization going. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you would love to share with our audience that we haven't talked about today?
I think, just off the top of my head, keep being, I think it's important to just be passionate about what you're passionate about, and just don't, I can't express it enough. I said it, take your space, be who you are. I think we all kind of share that vision and philosophy of we're all doing the best we can, and we're all passionate about helping each other out. So in general, let's do this. Let's push forward and keep the momentum going for us as women.
Yeah.
It's such a good reminder, though, really. I mean, I know you said it, but it's just a good reminder for everybody. Like, you be you, and you go after those things that you want, and don't let it take up the space, and don't let anyone get in your way when you know what it is.
Absolutely.
Well, there's nobody else like you. So come on, we need you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to have some fun. We end all of our podcasts with the rapid fire. So we're just going to ask you some fun questions. So let's see. Kim, do you want to go first? What do we have here today?
Hey, yes. Okay. I like this question a lot. What's your favorite comfort food, Jenn?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have two ice cream and fries. I know it's terrible for you, but
Love it.
But
No, I would too. Those are probably my two.
Well,
favorite
you know, you can actually dip your fries in the ice cream. So you
yes.
can actually have both. All right. How about domestic travel or international travel?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I've actually been everywhere except for, believe it or not, I haven't been to the Northeast. I haven't been to New York City yet. So I need to go there next. That's my next step. Internationally, I would say the UK is pretty amazing, and that's definitely a go-to spot.
Well, we might have to take you to the UK with our colleagues across the pond. You can come to Women in Work Summit with us to New York. We'll just pack a bag for you.
We're going.
Come with us.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so since becoming a mom, there's no way I can be a night owl. I would love to, but it's not a thing. It's definitely early for me.
Not a thing.
For the foreseeable future.
That's when I changed too, Jen, when I had my babies, and it was like, hey, I guess I'm a morning person now. Here we go.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And the last question we ask everyone is, what piece of advice or the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's a big one for me. So when I was in college taking English 2 or something like that, my professor, which I didn't really like too much because I didn't feel she was a good motivator, but she did say something to me that changed my life moving forward, which it was in reference to, what kind of autonomy, what kind of power do we have in society? And basically my answer to that prompt was, well, there's only so much I can do. And she just looked at me, and she was dead straight looking in my eyes, and she says, you have all the power. And she said it to me in a way where, like, what are you talking about? You've got a ton of power, and you have say, and you have, the ability to create change. And I was, from that moment on, I was like, okay, it stuck with me, and I really kind of shaped a lot of my decision making after that, and it was a huge empowerment moment for me. So yeah, that's definitely it.
Wow. I love those moments. Right. Do you remember her name?
Oh my gosh, no.
I was gonna say, we should give her a shout out. Maybe she'll listen in this small world that we're in. I love that, and hopefully someday she'll know the impact that she had on you. Because I'm sure that it impacted what you're doing with We Belong Everywhere as well. So it has been a delight to have you on the show. We'll post all of your information in show notes, but until then, audience, go find joy in the journey. Thank you for listening to the Medovia Menopause Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for future episodes, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. There are more than 50 million women in the U.S. who are navigating the menopause transition. The situation is compounded by the presence of stigma, shame, and secrecy surrounding menopause, posing significant challenges and disruptions in women's personal and professional spheres. Medovia is out to change the narrative. Learn more at medovia.com. That's MIDOVIA.com.